Good afternoon. I'm Commissioner Stan Washington, Chair of the Public Works Committee, joined by my other chair. Seems like we just left a meeting.
Exactly.
And that's Commissioner Elaine Boyer, and also joined by Commissioner Kathy Gannon. And so we'll go right into our agenda. Happy New Year to everybody. I think our next meeting, staff will be when? Really get into the meeting. We haven't set a day yet. For that next meeting, we'll set the meat of the matter for our CIP and all those kind of things. So we got a couple of agenda items. Ted, good to see you. And Zach, thank you for attending as well. The first agenda item will be our minutes, and I want to get those out of the way. Commissioner, we good?
Yes, sir.
That is from our last meeting when you were president. Yes.
Yeah. And I will move approval.
And I will second that. Any questions, concerns, or discussion board? Hearing none, I will second that, and we'll now ready to vote.
Yes, sir.
All in favor? And we clearly have enough votes to approve our minutes and minutes as read. The first agenda item is the office space lease agreement with Pentagon Club. And Mr. Weed, thank you so much for being here.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
And been joined by Commissioner Sharon Martin. So we have more than a board. All right. Go ahead, Mr. Weed. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. Pentagon Club is the, well, I shouldn't say the Pentagon Club. The lease in question is for the obsolete tower cab at the airport. The FAA has abandoned that tower, moved out of that tower, and some years ago, a group of people came to the airport and asked to lease the space for their club to have functions and to host Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, stuff like that,
Sure.
Teaching aviation. And that lease was negotiated and done at that time. Their lease comes up for renewal. Now there's another party that wants the space. So I have two parties that want the space. In order to not get crossways with the FAA, I asked the FAA Airports Division, and they said you should just do a request for proposals and take their proposals. So through purchasing and contracting, we issued a request for proposals, established a 5-person board to hear the proposals, to review the proposals, and the proposals came in. The RFP called for a minimum rent and a proposer's recommended schedule of increases, CPI increases. And the proposal also called for compliance with the DeKalb County Local Small Business Enterprise Ordinance. One proposal came in with a rent higher than the minimum rent specified in the RFP and a schedule of increases. The other proposal came in with a rent fee, basically what the minimum was.
Okay.
One proposal came in with compliant with the LSP ordinance. The other proposal didn't comply with the LSP ordinance.
When you say one another, are you referring to the same order?
A
Higher
and
rent,
B.
minimum rent?
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So we interviewed both parties. The interview with the group collectively known as the Pentagon Club, Stress Community. The interview with the other group, the man was going to use it, his company was going to use it as a private office. The board, the majority of the board, I'll say, sided with the group collectively known as the Pentagon Club, voted in favor of awarding the lease to the group collectively known as the Pentagon Club, and not the other entity. That said, I'm not sure why I'm here, but I'm here to answer.
We were trying to.
I had purchasing and contracting draw up the lease, and we put it on the agenda. It was deferred in December when I was out of town, and I didn't know why it was deferred and didn't know who deferred it. And I came to the last meeting, and
Sure.
it was deferred again, and I showed up on your agenda, sir.
Well, we kind of had the same question because we wondered why I was on the Public Works Committee's agenda as well. But let me ask you about the lease. The lease had an automatic renewal of after 1 year for 5 years?
It's 3 5-year terms.
3 5-year term. Okay, and then the last thing is that the rent increase was actually what, 2%?
2% per year.
Okay. Any question?
Yeah,
I'm trying to shed light on it. Yes.
Just, Mike, why is it the tower, why are we even renting it out? I don't understand. Why don't we just,
It's found money. It's
I mean, what is?
it's found money.
Okay.
Basically, that's it. I mean, you can't get an appraisal. You can't get a fair market rent on the property because it's not ADA accessible.
Gotcha.
So the RFP has to say that it's not ADA accessible. Well, you can't get a commercial appraisal on a piece of property that's not ADA accessible. It's 25 or it's $4,000, $5,000 a year, whatever it is, $350 a month times 12 for a space that would sit up there
Unused.
unused. And if someone can get some enjoyment out of it, and we can get a little money out of it,
Right.
why not lease it?
Okay.
Has there been liability issues or anything like that? It just seems like such a, I don't know. Yeah, an odd thing for government to be
Oh,
involved
it's a
with
very
this,
odd
leasing
thing.
this little thing out.
I don't.
Can't we just take it down? Why do we,
Well, you can't take it down because it's part of the history of Cap Peachtree Airport. I mean,
we have a
that,
historical tower.
Okay. Any other question that we'll have to make a decision on this one that's been on the agenda? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I deferred it the first time, thank you, and appreciate you coming, because you weren't here. I was just wondering, in terms of what their use was going to be. You said they had a community focus, what do they want to do with it? There's lots of rumors about what it used to be used for.
there are 30 individuals. There are 30 individuals that have the combination to the door. Then they split the rent up,
Gotcha.
whatever, $35 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And I think twice a year they have club events where all 30 of them will be up there.
Little club meeting.
Club meeting.
It's like a
and
treehouse.
It's generally on.
Exactly.
It is
Just
like a
like a
treehouse.
It's like a kid's treehouse.
Yeah, and generally they have a Christmas party and they go up there on the 4th of July. You can see 3 or 4 different fireworks displays around Atlanta from up there. And the rest of the time you'll see 1 or 2 of them go up, or sometimes you'll see 3 or 4 of them go up with
So
a
when they
group
say-
with the Boy Scouts, with a group of Cub Scouts.
It's just my thought, if we're gonna be in the event business, I could make more money. I mean, I really could. I mean, I could rent it out and make more money.
Well, but then
You and I,
I think you have a liability issue.
I've heard about this for years in the community as the private club for the 30-something. I don't even know who these people are, I have no idea. But it just goes against my grain to have a private club on the
On
airport.
government.
I mean, it does. I mean, if I could use it for communities, if school people wanna go up there, or,
But
Boy Scout groups,
the
but
only
30 people
reason,
to go have
the
a private
only
club on
reason
government
that
property
it's a
hurts
private
me.
club is because of
And it's not
the
against you. I'm
because
just
it's
saying I'm
because of
opposed
the
to it.
ADA issue. Okay, I mean, if you wanted to take a school group up there, they would have, you know.
How big
I
is
hate
up
to be
there?
callous.
How big is up there, Mike?
630.
A third of the size of this room.
Small, round
It's real
circle.
small.
Round circle.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's take two other questions, we'll decide.
Is this boring?
Yes.
This is very important.
We're gonna move this off the agenda today.
We've just been
Commissioner.
dying to find out more about this.
Yeah, right,
About
right,
this
right.
private club.
Are women allowed?
Sure.
Is there any gender bias or
I think
race bias
20
or any other bias?
Actually, I think 20 to 30 women, members are women.
Oh, okay. Maybe we need to have an open house for this club
Mm.
as part of their community focus. And I specifically like to know, how is the RFP advertised?
Who's advertising the champion?
So the normal process that we go
Normal
through.
process.
Okay.
You missed your chance.
Okay.
I wasn't gonna bid on it, I'm just saying.
You could've made
I could make
more
more
money.
money,
Make more money.
yeah.
Well, since we have RFP, it is on the
Okay.
agenda,
I would suggest they have an open house.
let's entertain the pledge of the committee.
First you have to have a motion.
I'm entertaining the pledge. Whatever you, motion, no motion, I'm entertaining your pleasure.
I just don't support the private club.
Just tell me what you want. Anybody else?
I'm not in
You
favor
want-
of this.
Would they
item.
change their name?
Defer, to hold it, no, whatever it is.
Well, we can hold it.
I've
Okay,
got my
seems,
questions answered. I'm not
okay.
part of the committee, but I appreciate you hearing.
not a
it.
problem.
Thank
It
you.
seems that the sentiment of the committee members is that kind of hold it, so I'm gonna table this again. Just take the, I hate to do it, but I'm going to
Or
do
just
it.
let the full board take it,
Well-
and then you don't have to worry about it. It's up to you, Mr. Chair.
Well, I would entertain a motion to send it out,
I'll make a motion
There
to
you
send
go.
it to the full board.
okay, with no action from
No
this board.
action.
All right, I got a motion. I got a motion and a second to send it to the full committee with no action, no recommendation, and get it off our agenda. Any additional questions, concerns? Hearing none, are you ready to vote? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, and motion carries. Thanks so much, Mr. Van Wee.
Thank you.
Thank you
Yes,
for
sir.
coming.
Did not
Yeah,
know
oh
what
yeah,
that was about,
interesting.
okay.
Interesting.
Thank y'all so much, I know what that was about.
It's a private treat.
I still don't, right. I still don't. Let's move right along.
I promise you I can make more money out of that.
We're being televised. Thank you, Mr. Van Wee. Let's come back to order. Let's come back to order. Commissioners, let's go back to order. All right, Mr.
Yeah,
Mr.
can-
Reinhardt, you have more information on, we want to talk to you about the environmental monitoring gas collection.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about that? We also have a handout, thank Commissioner Gannon sent it out last week, and she also forwarded it out again today with some of the different ideas and questions on it, but you go right into your presentation.
Yes, sir. Maybe I'll start with a little background on what this is, the scope of work, and then how it got to best and final coming out of the finance committee. As
Oh,
the
yeah, yeah,
Seminole landfill, we have a gas collection system in the old closed portion of the landfill, phase 1 and 2, and in the most recently closed first unit of phase 3 in the landfill. And this gas collection system, we're required under our air quality permits to ensure that this vacuum system is collecting most of the methane gas and that it's not escaping into the atmosphere because it's a greenhouse gas. And so we have monitoring stations for air quality monitoring, and then we have to maintain those wells because they'll tend to get water into the well, and the vacuum system won't fully function if it gets too much water in it. And so this is the contract for the company that on an annual basis does the monitoring, fills out our monthly reports to the EPD on air quality compliance, maintains the system if something breaks and it has to be fixed, because it's got to be an immediate fix. We can't risk a permit violation by letting it go for some period of time. And so this, the current vendor, Geosyntec, has been doing this for the last 5-year contract. And at some point last year, purchasing put it back out for proposals on a new 5-year term. And there were 3 companies that proposed, Geosyntec, Oasis, and Golder. And the selection,
Golder Associates.
Golder
All right,
Associates.
gotcha.
And the selection committee, as usual process, ranked them based on qualifications and experience and project team proposed. And then they shortlisted, in this case shortlisted all 3 firms for interviews and for final scoring. And then at the end of that process, of course, once they've scored them based on qualifications, they open everybody's cost proposal, which they did in this case. And the highest scoring firm, which was Geosyntec, was also the highest on dollar proposal. And then the second highest scoring, I think, was second highest on dollar and third highest, et cetera. And so the selection committee's recommendation was to go with the highest scoring firm, Geosyntec. Purchasing brought that forward, came to finance committee a couple of months ago now, I think. And in the finance committee, the discussion was, well, since all three are shortlisted, and we can both look at technical score and cost proposal, should we maybe this time go with the lowest cost proposal? And so, after discussing it some in committee, what the finance committee asked Kelvin to do, which was their recommendation to the full board, and then the board authorized Kelvin to do, was to go into best and final negotiations. So in other words, to say we won't necessarily just take the highest scoring, since it happens to be higher on dollars. Since all three have been shortlisted, let's bring all three back in and say, do you want to sharpen your pencil any further and give us a better cost proposal? And so all three firms did come back in, and they all lowered their cost proposal somewhat. This time, the second highest on qualification scoring, Oasis, brought their dollar amount down to the most competitive dollar amount. And so that's why then at this point, purchasing is coming back with an updated recommendation that says, based on those best and final negotiations, we recommend Oasis since they sharpened their pencil the most.
And they did a lower bid, basically.
They did, they lowered the lower cost.
The low cost.
The other issue in this is that a component of this RFP was that in addition to the maintenance and monitoring of that gas collection system, they wanted each firm to have available engineering hours for on-call services. You might need to design an improvement or prepare a spec for an extension of the system. And so, I guess is what I would call a consolation prize, but a legitimate one. Purchasing is saying, well, the firm we're recommending for best and final price on the routine maintenance, we will include for the other two firms that on-call engineering proposal, since they were qualified to do either. And so in essence, their recommendation states the fixed price annual work would be Oasis at, I think, 98,000 or something.
That's correct.
And then the other two firms would be on call for as needed engineering service on the system for up to 500,000, I think, each.
It is on cost service for 3 years.
So that way, all three are getting some scope of the work, but the firm that delivered the best and final price was recommended for the base work, and the other two would be on call for the engineering services. So that's how we got to where this is.
Okay.
That's complicated.
All right. So basically what you're saying is that 3 of them should get a piece of the pie, although Oasis actually is the best and final offer.
On the core scope of monitoring and maintaining.
And the other 2 would be for on-call service for a period of 3 years for $500,000.
I think it's 5 years.
On-call engineering services for 3 years.
Okay, 3 years.
Okay. Question, Commissioner Ford?
Just a question, have we ever done a best and final offer before?
We have, golf course was done that way. When the two firms proposed on golf, one was better on price, but the other had the LSBE percentage. The board directed purchasing go back into best and final negotiation. Now, at the end of that process, they decided to joint venture, so they got the best of both. When the development outsourcing was being looked at, it was sent to best and final. That one didn't end up working. Nobody ended up comfortable with either proposal. But we have done best and final.
So is that a new purchasing policy from the administration to do that?
That'd be a better question for Kelvin as to whether that rises to the level of policy or just a good practice. It's pretty typical in the purchasing business, I'd say, that in a proposal process, can't do it with a bid, but in a proposal process.
I guess I'd just like to know the criteria when we're gonna start doing that.
Best and final.
And what kind of projects are best and final?
Yeah,
I got you.
I think if Kelvin were here, what he'd tell you is the best candidates are ones where if among the short list, you felt like the difference in score was reasonably close, there wasn't a clear best
I just want a
qualifier.
tool in my toolbox if
And
that's
price.
possible. Okay.
Yeah, for certain circumstances like this, it's a logical solution if you're saying, well, the scores are close and qualified, the prices are close. I don't want to necessarily just pick lowest price or just highest score. And so best and final is a way to get to what you think is best value, so to speak.
All right, Commissioner Barnes Sutton and then Commissioner Ray, Kathy Gannon.
Okay, I see that the scores changed, and when they went back for the best and final offer, I was under the impression that they were negotiating price, so they got to renegotiate the terms of the, how did the scores?
the-
Scores are the same.
Well, the shortlist of,
I think
No, wait.
what you might be looking at is when they first score them, they'll list that score.
The shortlist.
After the interviews,
right,
they can adjust the score based on the interview. And so what's probably there is their original score before
On the
the
interview.
shortlisting in the
Okay.
interview.
Okay.
And then their final score after they were shortlisted in the interview. But you're exactly right, that
It
best and
is-
final
it is changing.
negotiation was only on bottom line dollars. There was no change in what the selection committee had given.
Okay,
its
explain it
score.
to me again. Okay, we're on the second page where it says firms interviewed, and
That's-
then there's a score.
that was
Okay,
the
why,
first shot.
why is that different than the shortlisted firm, which is the same people?
Because after their first interview and their score,
Mhm.
and they're shortlisted, the committee can go back over the scores and say, after we've gotten all the final information, is there any final adjustment we
And
have
they
in
rescore
our
that.
assessment of qualifications? And so theoretically, what it means is a company that scored well initially, but then came in and clarified some stuff better on their interview, the committee would then say, okay, after having gotten more information from the interview, I'm rethinking how I scored this, and I missed something,
Okay.
or I got some extra information.
Commissioner Gannon?
Thank you, I appreciate it. As indicated, I too thought this process was rather weird, and I've only been doing this for about 8 years, so I've never seen this before, other than the development department, where we were directed to send it back for RFP, because the negotiation got too screwy. People, it wasn't in the first scope, asking them to do different things, and it got confusing. So in order to keep the process pure, if you will, as much as it can be, it was directed to go back and do a new RFP on it. So I have some specific questions about their experience and their experience, where they have their experience, how long they've had the experience, because I see 100 points, more than 100 points, as not close together. I see that as being
Wow.
different.
Clear difference. And
Clear
that's-
difference.
That's the subjective judgment of the
Yeah.
process. Clearly, the
Well,
board has
the-
the authority. You
If
can
I can
say
finish,
highest
thank
score
you.
period.
I do have a list of specific questions that I actually would like specific answers to. And I don't imagine that, I guess I sent this to Calvin and CC'd everybody, because I'm assuming he's the person with the answers to these. Because I don't see them as close together. I think there is clearly more experience, at least in the ratings of the selection committee. They gave a recommendation to us and said, based on this experience, we think it should go with this firm. And they are a little bit higher. And then we said, for whatever reason, oh, let's do best and final offer. So I'm with you. If we're going to say that, there needs to be some criteria, or we can say that for everybody. We don't like this price. Let's go with the low guy.
See, I kind of think
And then
also,
we're
Commissioner,
talking about
I agree with you.
experience issues.
Yeah, I agree, but I think some of those questions are for Kelvin, though.
Yes.
And just
Well,
to be
I'm-
fair, Mr. Reinhardt.
She sent it to
No, I
me.
said
I
that,
know,
but
I-
it's Calvin, I'm just saying it's on this agenda,
I-
and I didn't get the answers when I asked for them,
Well, let's
when
see
it
if we
came
get
to the
let's see if we get a
board.
couple more answers.
So
there. See
let's
if
get
Ted can do
those.
it. If not, we may have to defer to Kelvin.
No.
Right?
Well, because my
I mean,
question is, who interviews with best and final offer? Did the selection committee go back then
That's a very good
and
question,
talk
yeah.
about?
No, in this case, Kelvin didn't bring back the full
So
selection
Kelvin
committee
did
to do
the whole
Kelvin did
selection.
the negotiation, and I sit on in it.
So
to
you and
make sure I
Calvin
knew
did the
that they
negotiation.
didn't change any scope things. And
That is one of my
essentially-
questions. Who actually is
essentially,
doing this negotiation?
Kelvin did it at the direction of the finance committee, saying, go back and see if they want to sharpen their pencil, because the finance discussion was, we see a firm has scored higher on qualifications, but we might want to try to save some money, and that was the direction that they
Okay.
gave.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right, it's not a right or wrong answer.
Right,
You
okay.
can choose through a proposal process to say we want higher score period, regardless of cost difference. Or you can choose to say, among the shortlisted firms, we'll take the lowest price because they're all
Right.
qualified. And you have to make that subjective judgment about how much more qualified
Mhm.
might the points indicate versus the dollars involved. And this one's a close call either way.
Okay, well,
Sure.
one more question, probably in your bailiwick, was the permit. Obviously, I know our EPD, EPA, whoever, permit is a real big deal. And I know when we suggest things occasionally, Billy will go, don't mess with my permit. So how do we know, again, I guess that's the experience question, that these people have the experience and the technical arsenal, if you will, to be able to keep up with that monitoring? These are specific government reports, so it's sort of a specialty, so that that permit isn't compromised at all.
Two things. The committee should not have shortlisted anybody who wasn't qualified to do the work.
Okay.
And then the score is meant to reflect who you think is better qualified
Okay.
among firms that are qualified. And in their proposal, they should have listed the experience and the background of the people proposed.
Exactly.
If it said, we need a person who's licensed in X, then they should have the exact
The specialty
resume
should
of
be
the
in
person
there,
that's
okay.
doing it.
Yeah, because the
And
two low
so-
guys are close together, but the other guy is
Down the road.
far out.
Mhm.
ahead.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, I'll get the rest of my information from
Okay.
Cal. Thank you.
All right, any other questions from the committee on this one? Hearing none, pleasure to come in on this one. This one's been on our agenda for a little while. How long? Deferred? Since first meeting? Okay. All right.
Move that we defer this until we talk.
That's right.
Second.
We got a motion to defer and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it, and we defer this until we talk to Kelvin and get some other answers, okay? Before we leave, Mr. Reinhardt, and Zach, thank you for being here, our new CEO. We had a couple of questions. I'm trying to make this a short meeting, but there were two items on the agenda. One was for about $7 million, one for $2 or $5 million. I understand that it has to go to FAB a lot of times, but I think for this committee, you need to kind of give us the scope of work. One of them was for the Briar Lake and Henderson Road. I don't know if that was the one with $7 million.
That was the one after that.
Okay, then the other one was, okay, I didn't have it in front of me. I was
Yeah.
going by memory. I'm trying to make sure I take my vitamins, I can think them out.
Me too.
All right, and then the other was for 155,
Yes,
and
Kim.
it kind of gives us a little scope of the work.
Certainly.
I know that we're looking at the price at FAB, but what are we doing if we want to talk to our neighborhoods and get that information out?
Let me talk to the Candler one first.
Sure.
It's probably one you're all real familiar with. If you remember, Candler Road has been in the Georgia DOT streetscape program for a while. And they did a first phase that didn't include landscaping because at the time, the governor had a ban on new landscaping during the drought. But they held the money in the account for us. And then since then, they also put some money into that for resurfacing because the pavement conditions were bad.
Okay.
So Georgia DOT had in the program for us the completion of the landscape on Candler and the resurfacing, and they were holding on to that money. And we asked them, please wait a little while longer because in the watershed CIP you approved at the end of '10, one of the major water line replacements in there was the water line on Candler Road. It's one that breaks frequently. You've probably seen a lot of the patches up and down Candler. It's a 16-inch line, so when it does break, it does a lot of damage. And so fortunately, GDOT said, yes, we'll hold the money until you can get the water line designed under the CIP, which they did. And so what this bid is the combination of replace the water line and then complete the GDOT funded work. So it's got both the GDOT money, say 2 or 3 million, plus the watershed money, about 4 or 5 million, to complete those improvements on Candler Road. The water line is line 25 in the CIP.
That's why it was important for us here to hear.
Yep, so the water line is line 25 in the CIP, and it's in that report that we give each month when we update that. And then the street resurfacing and landscape work is the portion that GDOT's funding from the old earmarked money they've been holding for the Candler quarter.
How much was that, the old money?
There's about $2 or $3 million of GDOT money, and then 4 or 5 million of it is the water line replacement. And so it's well under what was budgeted in the CIP. Watershed had budgeted $12 million for this one.
Right.
A very high estimate. I don't know for what reason, but obviously we've gotten bids that are way into that. And so we'll still have some balance left from that for either additional work at Steve on Candler, or you could move it at some point in the future to some other project.
Okay. And the Briar Lake Road and Henderson Road?
Those are in line 82 on the CIP, which is asbestos cement pipe replacement. We have around the county some of this old asbestos cement pipe, which is very fragile. And once it begins to age, 30 or so years old, like most of this is, it's very difficult to repair because it's so fragile. And once a piece breaks, it might break for a long length. And so we are trying to take some of that worst pipe per the CIP and schedule it for replacement. So these sections on Briar Lake and Henderson are among about 10 locations that Watershed had identified as some of the worst of that material that breaks the most frequently. One of those projects we bid last year, and they were just wrapping up on Briar Cliff. These two, the bid is just opened. There's 4 locations that are up for advertisement now on purchasing's website. That's Fair Oaks, Flakes Mill, Allgood, and Conyers. And so bids are being taken for those 4. And then there's a final 2 miles that are in purchasing to ready to advertise, and those are on Flat Shoals and Fraser.
Okay.
And so those are some of the worst of that asbestos cement under line 82.
I saw them on the list. I just want to make sure the committee knew that it came up on our agenda and it was highlighted that this was a part of what we're doing with the CIP. So I want to make sure we were on top of it. It was a lot of money. And I thought we needed to make sure we knew a little bit about it. Yes, ma'am.
And then when they do that, what happens to the road? Because Briar Cliff is a mess. And Briar Cliff is a major thoroughfare, but Henderson and Briar Lake are not major thoroughfares, but are they gonna look like that at the end?
No. The reason we begged purchasing and they helped get Briar Cliff bid first on the fast track was because that was in the LMIG program for 2012 because of the poor road condition. And so fortunately there too, GDOT was patient with us. They had already awarded LMIG, but they said, we'll give the contractor another 3 months till April of this year so you can expedite the bidding of the water main, which was done. Fortunately, the contractor stayed on schedule. Kenley Construction did a good job on this one. And they're now substantially complete. They have a couple final tie-ins from current services to get to the new line. But then GDOT's LMIG contractor will come in and resurface that whole stretch of road before April, which is when that contract expires. So fortunately, this was one of those situations where transportation and water were coordinated. The state helped us out, and we were able to make sure that we got the necessary water line work done before the pending street work
Paving,
came.
and so then these roads then will be
Will be
repaved.
resurfaced.
Okay.
Yeah, the other ones where the water main work is in a road, then they'll resurface that portion of the road after the water line's done.
And then I've been told for years, and I get this all the time from the area, the sidewalk was approved years ago for Henderson. We're talking now at least 10 years or more. What's the
It's
last word on that?
That is one, there used to be that project going 10 years back in the tip called 18 County Sidewalks. And Ray's Road got funded and built, Rainbow got funded and built, and there is money on Salem, Flat Shoals, and Henderson that's now in the right-of-way phase. We're
Is
still
that on the
back-
CIP list anywhere?
It wouldn't be on this because this is the watershed
Right.
CIP. It's on the tip.
Okay.
It's in the Transportation Improvement Program. And it's behind schedule because as our host money is tanked out, it's hard for us to do all the right-of-way on all the projects. And so, because this is earmarked money, we've been lucky it's been staying with the project even though it's behind schedule. So we're starting the right-of-way phase. It's going to be slow because we don't have enough money to fast-track it. But it's money that's not at a high risk. Although that was the project where we got
I've
a
heard
bit
that.
surprised when they
Keep running
rescinded a
so I
piece
can
of the
see
money.
it done. Could I have, when you start
We're
this,
funded for now.
to put out like leaflets in the area, I can give them to the community members, they'll put it out, but can you give me some update on the sidewalks? Because the minute they start on this, they're gonna be hammering me on that again. We get it about every 6 months.
All right, any other questions? Promise will be a short minute. I just got 2 issues and we're ready to go, promise you. Okay, the last one, Ted, Mr. Reinhardt, the engineering contract with Parsons for snapping. Talk a little bit about that for us again. It's on the
Yes,
agenda
sir.
as well.
If you remember at the last Public Works Committee, we talked about how this was the contract for the design, originally for design, both of the replacement snap finger plant and replacement pole bridge plant. And bonds were issued to fund this like back in 2006. But then we got hit with the drought and the capital program got delayed. And ultimately, when you approved the CIP in 2010, snap finger replacement was still fully in there, but because growth had tanked off, the board took the pole bridge replacement out of the schedule because it's not urgent. The population growth isn't requiring replacement of that plant as on the original schedule design. And so at that point, Parsons stopped work on pole bridge since we weren't going to bid it. But they completed snap finger. We got our permits from the EPD. The first phase is under construction now, clearing and grading. And then the second phase is in purchasing. The pre-qualification process on general contractors is going under right now. And then the formal bid of that will take place by this summer. But because of the delays in schedule, the original Parsons contract was expiring at the end of 2012. And so what this agenda item does is extend the term another 5 years through the likely life of construction of the facility. There'll be 3 years for this second phase of building headworks and primaries and secondaries. And then there's a final phase 3, some of the advanced treatment at the end of the process. So it extends their term through that expected life of construction, so the engineer record's available during construction. Doesn't increase the cap value of the contract, but it restates the scope to show that they're not having to do pole bridge like previously. They're having to spend more time on snap finger than originally expected.
Sure.
And so that's because it's a large project, that's why it has to go by formal amendment. It couldn't just be a routine purchasing adds the term, because there's other changes other than just the term.
So
So
basically a
that's
5-year
what it's
extension is what
involved
we're
in.
really talking about.
It's a 5-year
Right.
extension, doesn't increase the cap,
Mhm.
so there's no more money involved, but does ensure that they're available during construction as the engineer of record with the dollars that are remaining on the contract itself.
Okay. This questions, concerns? Just at our next meeting, can you help us with the last thing is I think we, the fee, increase for water and sewer we talked about briefly. The tax districts.
Yes, sir. The,
You know, I'm talking about today, I just want to make
okay.
sure that we prepare for that, and make sure that works. And then the last thing, since we
Although I
have,
think that's up for a vote on the 22nd.
is it on the 22nd?
We already approved it.
I
Did we approve it here?
I think you
We did, oh, we did
passed
approve,
right
okay.
on.
Yeah, we did.
Did you, okay, yeah, you got your.
I mean, it's been a month,
Okay,
yeah.
I just want to make sure,
I
I
we
know,
forget.
Commissioner Barnes asked a question about it. Okay, so we're good on that then, all right, okay, all right, all right. The last thing is that, at our next meeting, just be prepared to update us on the CIP. Make sure that, we have, the stakeholders, Kelvin and Mr. Basista here. The PM should have been awarded, hopefully close to being awarded by then.
That's a question for Kelvin.
Okay, all right. And then lastly, since we have Mr. Williams here, Mr. Williams, we've had a problem getting all the information. They've been working on it, hitting at it, but they missed a couple of times. It's the take-home vehicles. We need to look at that policy again. And if the policy needs to be updated, and I say that it does, the committee, I think, maybe think that it does, that we need to look at the take-home vehicle policy for the county so we can be transparent. We're trying to save money. We know the budget. We're trying to figure out we're going to do a millage increase and all kind of crazy stuff. That would show the public that we're really, really concerned about what we do as a county government.
And is it fair to say the biggest issue is the number of miles outside the county?
Outside of the county, that would be the
The
fairest thing to
current
say.
policy allows an employee with a take-home to take it up to 35 miles.
Mhm.
Outside of the county.
Outside the county, right. And we're just looking at those things. Non-essential personnel, you're not emergency personnel, you work in a particular department. I personally don't think you need to take a car home even if you live in 5 miles away. I mean, if you're not essential, you know. Water pipes busting or police, that's different. But, you know, just look at that. Then lastly, committee, you have anything? All right, since our first meeting public, you have anything? Great. Oh, yes, sir.
Like to see you amend that 5 miles to 0.
Thank you, Joe. All right, and Mr. Williams, thank you for attending our first meeting. Thank you for televising our diamonds. And if we could, is that it? Was good? Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second, I'm sure. Second. I heard a second. Second, all in favor say aye. Ayes clearly have it. Let's stand up and get out of here.